We put our focus on making sure that trust is extremely high from both how we're handling the transaction perspective and what we're doing with data on an ongoing basis. And our CEO, has said repeatedly the currency of today is trust, and I love quoting him on that one because I think it's extremely true.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work, episode 358. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. Our community is growing thanks to you, our loyal listeners. If you haven't yet, subscribe to our newsletter. It offers additional AI fun facts, some tips and clips that don't always make it into the main episode. The link is in the show notes. Of course, we're all in this together. If you enjoyed today's episode or any other, share it with just one friend. It's good karma. They'll know you care about using AI to make humans better. And, if someone shared this with you, tell them thanks and pay it forward. If you leave a comment, I just may share it in an upcoming episode, like this one from Elaine in Tallahassee, Florida. Go Knowles, who is a writer. Lane's favorite episode is the great one from season 5 with Josh Allen Dykstra, founder of the Work Revolution, on finding work you'll love. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly on the show. Of course, the added bonus, you get one AI fun fact each week. Here it is for today. Shan Agrawal, Chief Business Officer for Coinbase, writes in CoinDesk that stablecoins are set to redefine global payments as AI drives adoption. In it, he says the U.S. Congress passed the Genius Act to define stablecoins as payment instruments. With congressional support, they'll operate as mainstream financial infrastructure. Thanks to AI-driven adoption, stablecoins outperform traditional banking systems with instant settlement, low costs, and programmability, enabling AI-native commerce and machine-to-machine transactions. Despite their $280 billion market cap, stablecoins remain very small compared to more than $20 trillion in U.S. monetary supply, and they're currently used more as a store of value than as a payment instrument. We, of course, will link to the full article in the show notes. My commentary, as we recently discussed with Tether founder and CEO Paulo Arduino, great episode if you haven't heard that one, frictionless, trustworthy, fast financial transactions are the future of global payments. With stablecoin deregulation, it's hard to know if incumbent financial institutions will also be the ones to own decentralized banking on blockchains. That might seem like an oxymoron, but don't count out big finance to disrupt itself, given the high stakes here. What is clear is that AI transactions that involve micropayments and must occur in microseconds aren't a fit for legacy payment processing infrastructure or even economics. And this, of course, is a discussion we'll continue to have in subsequent episodes. Now, shifting to this week's very special conversation, George Maddaloni is the Executive Vice President and CTO for Operations at Mastercard. In that role, he and his team own performance and modernization for technology and platforms that serve Mastercard's more than 35,000 global employees. George has held similar IT exec leadership roles in the past at AIG, UBS, AT&T, GM, and Merrill Lynch. He also serves on the board of sustainableIT.org. George received his BS in Mechanical Engineering and Computer Science from the Johns Hopkins University, go Blue Jays, and his MBA from Fordham. And for full disclosure, George and I co-invest together through HMG Ventures, which means I can say from firsthand experience, he's one of the most thoughtful, humble leaders around. Without further ado, George, my friend, it's a pleasure to finally have you on the podcast. Let's get started by having you share a bit more about that illustrious background and how you got into the space.
Yeah, Dan, thanks for having me, and really appreciate our relationship over the past several years, pre-COVID actually. So, and the way we've been able to keep in touch in this hybrid world, which I know you've been very involved in. But thanks for having me. You gave a great background already, but I think, as you articulated, got into technology right out of school, really, with AT&T and Bell Laboratories as a very young software engineer. And very quickly at the time at Bell Labs, I was working with some extremely smart engineers in RF engineering, and they handed me a Cisco router one day and said, "Hey, we maybe you can help us evolve our network in some way." And after unboxing my first router and configuring my first network, I was hooked. And from there, at AT&T, they created a network outsourcing business that I was a part of, and as you mentioned, had roles at Merrill Lynch, at General Motors, running their networks on behalf of AT&T. Worked in New York City during 9/11 when we had to move all of Merrill Lynch's data centers out of Lower Manhattan and recover their trading floor in Jersey City and then bring it back for market open. Learned a lot about disaster recovery and how to stay calm in a crisis as a leader. And I think from there, the career turned from technical to leadership as I moved from AT&T to UBS to AIG. And here, really always liked being a technology leader, but also understanding how to run a team, how to lead an organization, and how to move things forward. So love driving change. Love the industry that I've been able to be a part of, from banking to insurance to payments. The whole financial services space has really been exciting for me, and certainly what's going on in technology at this point, has evolved me as a leader, much less my passion for driving change in organizations through the teams I run, much less the technology we deliver.
So if you roll back the clock a couple years, when AI was kind of dropped into the lap of a very unsuspecting or unprepared population, what has surprised you most as a leader in the tech field in terms of cultural adoption, maybe pushback, the technology? What do you think caught you off guard?
Yeah, so I think as this has evolved, first and foremost, I'm been at Mastercard now 5 years. We came through the pandemic, and my team runs all of the Mastercard network from a physical infrastructure perspective, the platforms, and certainly the employee technology that supports the way we design and develop our technology and our products behind it. Our technology has actually been leveraging AI for well over a decade. So I think we had a lot of runway in terms of the lead up to this, past, 2 years now of a ramp from generative AI perspective. First and foremost, we've had a decision management platform we call running AI and machine learning algorithms for that decade, and it operates at massive scale. It serves 150 models already, and really focuses on fraud prevention, and has to make decisions in extremely quickly. So we kind of had this, hey, we know what models are, we know what training is, we know what it means to do inferencing at real time in low latency. Probably the biggest surprise is, as you think about using neural networks and training new models, is what kind of impact you can make from that perspective. So we released a product called Decision Intelligence as part of that platform, which is trained on using generative AI techniques, and that very quickly saw improvement in accuracy of over 25%, and actually a reduction in false positives, which for a fraud prevention tool is great, right? We all probably have gotten some fraud alert when it was really us actually making the purchase, and you're like happy that they're looking out for you, but at the same time, it's friction that you want to remove. So we saw 80% improvement in terms of the elimination of false positives. So, I'd say just like there it is, right? The power in which some of these techniques can come to decisioning faster than ever before, and the way we were able to apply that in a relatively quick order to change the experience for our consumers was certainly one of the good things, one of the biggest surprises I've had. And then I think the second one, thinking about the topic of productivity and people, which the topic here that you focused on tremendously, is just for our employees. The way in which our employees have embraced AI from a learning perspective, from a development perspective, has been incredible. In just 1 year, we survey our employee base every year, and in just 1 year, we saw a dramatic shift of people saying that how comfortable they are in using AI. So in just 1 year, we saw that number of percentage of employees that were comfortable or felt that they had the capability to use AI tools jump 17%, which is one of the biggest jumps across any category we survey our employees by far. And those surveys, it's tough to move the needle single-digit percentage points. So to see something jump 17% was amazing. And certainly I think we put a lot into that at Mastercard. Obviously focused on using technology and using AI in our products, but we've done things like creating a guild, which is a group of data scientists and AI engineers that can come together across any product that they're building across the firm and really collaborate collectively as a community. So we set up that guild. We set up as part of that guild, they helped set up training for our employees. And in May of this year, when we launch our career development month, we featured that to all of them. And just the amount of uptick, the amount of interest, the amount of people that are going to those sessions and embracing the tools has been really, really impressive. So I think both on the product side, the capability you could get, but then just seeing our employees embrace the capability rapidly is it's been surprising.
That 17% increase year over year that you referenced, I'm not sure if you realize how unusual, how exceptional that is. Many employees are some combination of either apprehensive or mistrustful. There's still a lot of concern about if they're training their replacement. Change management is hard, certainly at the scale of Mastercard. So for a variety of reasons, most organizations are not benefiting from that kind of positive attitude shift in 12 months. What do you think it is about the culture of Mastercard or the leadership team's approach to AI? Why is Mastercard doing better than most?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the company, as you first off, think about what we do. Start with that. We've been in a core payments industry for a long time. It's a networking business. A networking business is really based on trust. So security, responsible use of and taking responsibility or custody of a transaction is extremely important to our customers, and the company and its people take that extremely seriously. So our mission statement is powering economies and empowering people. And we've had a long history of not just making sure that there's trust from a network perspective, but also that we're bringing people into an inclusive economy. So I think, when you talk about culture, I think it's extremely important to drive, why people want to be here and why we're one of the most trusted brands in the world. And it comes down to some of those fundamental tenets in our mission and that drive to have inclusiveness in the economy. From an AI perspective, we, like I mentioned before, we've been using AI for over 10 years, and that's centered on data. We know that. So thinking about responsible AI, we very early on set up an AI governance focus that focused on operational excellence, enablement, bias mitigation, and human oversight, transparency, and applied some standards along the way of how we're going to think about what tools we use and the like. And listen, it's not easy when you onboard a new tool at a big enterprise. I think anybody who tells you that they're going to do it fast is, I think, a little maybe utopian. You have to go through a process to make sure that you sanity check things and that you're using it safely. So we've really embedded those principles in the development process of when we're actually developing products, and we use that same thing when we're thinking about the tools that we use, and trusting our employees in terms of here are the principles that we expect you to operate by, and putting some guardrails in place so that they get a bumper if they've gone outside the lines. Because we know as soon as these tools set up, anybody could go, start chatting, start seeing what they could do. But we very quickly had to make sure that there were some guardrails in place to prevent people from both exposing themselves or exposing the company. So listen, I think all of that, along with communication along the way, has been part and parcel of what we've done to help people get educated about how to use them.
I think to the uninitiated, you hear Mastercard and you think about, a credit card company. It's probably more like a bank than a tech company. And yet, this conversation, not surprisingly, has all been about the importance of tech infrastructure to power the credit card business. Yeah. As a tech leader at a credit card company, how do you think about your role?
Yeah, I mean, first, to back up a step, first off, just to be clear, we are a payments networking company, not a bank. Banks are our customers. And even in the payments ecosystem, there's lots of players out there that operate at the edge and things like that. And we really focus on running our payments network and continuing to grow it. B, we're constantly looking at new networks that we can operate in. So in addition to running a credit card network, running a debit network, we're in cross-border payments, account-to-account payments, commercial business, and then we've also evolved to creating services that surround that business. And those services include, intelligence, cyber, like I mentioned, all of the fraud prevention that we can provide. Open banking is a big business as well. So, and we view this as kind of a circle of how our business operates. So, as we grow in payments, we're able to provide more intelligence. As we provide more intelligence, we're able to bring more people on the network, and the like. So that is key. And my role and my team's role is right in the center of all that. So running that cycle, if you will, we focus on leading with technology and working to provide all of the core platforms from an infrastructure perspective, from desktop to data center, and specifically up to the gateway, right? So we have a lot of messaging that runs on our network, APIs that run on our network, events and files that run on our network. So supporting all of those entry points at the edge of our network is huge, and that's how I think about my role.
You and I frequently get pitched by fintech companies, and I'll often say it feels like, features of Mastercard masquerading as companies, in part because Mastercard will always have such an insurmountable data moat. How do you think about innovation at the culture level? I mean, it must be both empowering to sit on the network and data that you have, but I'd imagine there also has to be a healthy state of paranoia that you maintain, because no shortage of other companies would like to encroach on your territory.
Yeah, I think we think about innovation all the time. I kind of go back to the business that we operate, much less the technology that we're operating in. It is a networking business. So when disruption happens, it's usually in one component or the other of the network that we're running, and it gives us the ability, I think, to respond, participate, partner, collaborate in some way, shape, or form. So a few things that we do, like you mentioned, we run a Start Path program where we mentor 5 to 6 fintechs a year. I've been running that for close to a decade now, and things like that, where we're looking at the fintech world and anything adjacent to what we do. Those could be things that are either participating in the network that we run, enabling more people onto that economy that we're trying to power, or potentially something where it's going to improve the safety and security of the environment. So we've seen tons of innovation, obviously across cybersecurity in every way, shape, or form. And we've participated in that angle as well. And so I think just we constantly are thinking about how to innovate for ourselves with our Foundry team internally within Mastercard. They're kind of our R&D-ish organization, and then last but most importantly, my team. Right, we're thinking about the next generation of infrastructure and how to take advantage of it. How to make instant a whole lot faster is one of the things we like to say within the company. So we're constantly on the lookout, especially in kind of the core networking and infrastructure space, in terms of what could be out there. But that gives you a sense of, when we're thinking about innovation, how we might think about it, either from a networking perspective, an R&D perspective, or just in core tech.
One of the I don't know, call it maybe associations that I have with regulated industries like payment processing is that you kind of pay a tax on innovation due to regulation or scrutiny, auditing, just the governance of running a large, high-profile business like what Mastercard does. And yet you've had a lot of success internally with AI adoption. I'm curious to know, with regard to the regulated side of the business, how do you think about exercising AI responsibly so that you can innovate, and pay as low of a regulation tax as possible?
Yeah, I think it, like I said before, I think it goes back to some of the things that we've learned along the way by practicing the use of AI in our core business for the past decade. I kind of mentioned up front the creation of AI governance, but actually, well before generative AI was on the scene, we were working on the topic of data and how to handle data, and thinking about that, just as many other tech companies have been. So Mastercard's had a set of data responsibility principles for some time. And those go back to ensuring security and privacy, the transparency aspects, and the things that regulators ask. Back to your point around regulation. So we have obligations to many regulators around the world. Are constantly in discussions with them, especially as again, from a networking perspective. There's always two sides of the network that we're interacting with. There's somebody purchasing something, and that's communicating back to a bank that's in a different location and sometimes in a different country from a cross-border perspective. So we've been working on making sure that we're very mindful from a data responsibility perspective from the get-go. Does that end up in us paying a tax of some kind? It's a good question, Dan, and I'd say maybe, but again, the focus of trust in the network is paramount, and I think we put our focus on making sure that trust is extremely high from both how we're handling the transaction perspective and what we're doing with data on an ongoing basis. And our CEO has said repeatedly the currency of today is trust, and I love quoting him on that one because I think it's extremely true.
Very well said. It's a satisfying answer that you compensate for any, quote, tax by the fact that you will trust your relationships. And I think, anyone would nod their head when it comes to brand awareness and trust of Mastercard. I've been thinking about it since you said it a few minutes ago, this idea that you took call it a decade-old machine learning model that was detecting fraud, decision intelligence, I believe, and then applied generative AI to it. Now, this is going to seem kind of naive, but you're an expert, so I'm going to ask a naive question. So something like detecting fraud, you would think would be in the domain of more classical machine learning. It learns some patterns in data, and you feed it some data it hasn't seen before. And based on the patterns, it says, here's the most likely thing. Fraud, not fraud, let's say, just to oversimplify it. It's not obvious how you get a 25% improvement in accuracy, or you referenced also, fewer false positives by applying generative AI, which is just really better language modeling. Would you mind unpacking that for us?
Yeah, I think the way, not to get too technical with the answer, but a way to think about our decisioning platform is it focuses on a lot of space. We have over 150 models that we run that could vary from parameters around not just the card number that's making the purchase, but also where is it and what are the most recent transactions associated with it. But many other things, and the language that's used there is certainly it's not the whole English or multiple languages that are out there, but it is very unique to the payment space. So as you start to incorporate some of the other data fields and things that are that come along with a transaction, you can start to see those patterns. And really, it comes to using more of the neural network math techniques associated with how you do the calculations against that model. So, probably a little bit I think the difference is it's a little bit less about, hey, let me feed it into, a model that's going to really be good at processing language, but more so, how do we use these math tactics to train our model in a much more effective way, and then put that back into the inferencing engine that we had already to make a decision. And ultimately, that comes up with a score of the likelihood of fraud. it's that, so it's that training process that we used using those neural, kind of neural network techniques and much more advanced math that to feed back into the inferencing side. Does that make sense?
Real good answer. I ask in part because I know in weather prediction, language translation, things where maybe they map to a similar pattern. Traditional data, you'd think you could train it or achieve the task using classical machine learning, and yet, we're shocked by the performance improvements you get when you apply foundation models or text-based models. And just really good example. Thanks for going through that. George, we're about out of time, but you're not getting off the hot seat without answering one last important question for me.
Sure.
I want you to put on your innovator hat. Maybe not necessarily the technologist hat, but I know you have an equally attractive innovator hat there with you. And let's say today in 2025, I would frequently go in and buy something, at a store with a physical card, plastic card, and I'll swipe or scan. I get a statement online that confirms, what I bought. The Borg of payment processing works. Money's debited from my bank account, etc. Let's say it's 2035, and we're having a version of that conversation. Dan goes and buys some lunch for George, and how's the process different in terms of the transaction that happens? And just again, maybe it's a naive question, but would love to get your 10 years in the future version of what that sequence looks like.
Yeah. Great one, and certainly one to think about. I think there's some really cool things that are game changers that I'm starting to see like right now emerge, and there's a saying around, we always like underestimate the pace at which these things, or overestimate the pace at which they actually come at us. But so the first for me that I'll bring to that story that you told that I've been really fascinated by is in the most recent advance of wearable glasses that incorporate AI capabilities. Number one, deliver them to your eyesight, like right there in an action. Incorporate speaker, microphone and speakers, and while today it's awesome, you can go and tap and pay. I just feel like there's an amazing opportunity, and from a payments perspective, we're constantly from a Mastercard payments perspective, we're constantly thinking about how can that be incorporated, and how can we imagine a different shopping experience, a different purchasing experience with somebody, with something like a set of glasses on, and I would think by that time in 2035, that'll be much more common, right? And you'll be either looking to make your payment in some way, shape, or form, or clicking your glasses or something to that effect, because it'll know it's you from an identity perspective and know how to trust it. So I think that's one space. Number two, I am extremely excited. Mastercard already has a huge edge component of our network, from a span of our network, 5,000 endpoints, edge computing edge points, and we can do so much more computing at the edge than what people are talking about even today. The form factor and the ability to even run language models at the edge, I think, will be there in 10 years. And distributing that computing power, I think it would be a huge advantage in so many different industries, and certainly for us. So we're already experimenting with that. So as I was talking about making those decisions in our AI engine, like if we can distribute that towards our edge, that's a huge asset for us that we're looking forward to. And I think what that'll mean in terms of that transaction is it's happening so much faster, right? Because those decisions are being delivered today. They're delivered in a few hundred milliseconds, and we can get down to tens of milliseconds, right? And that is huge from that perspective. And yeah, so I think those are just two examples. Probably the last one, this one's probably the most far-fetched, I think, but very interesting is just the space of quantum. And, we've seen people hit 1,000 qubits, but, there's a whole bunch I'm watching in terms of error correction and what's going to come from that perspective. So I think the space of encryption, the quantum day, I'm eager to see by 2035, are we all going to be quantum proof from a quantum key distribution perspective? And will we have capabilities from a quantum perspective, from a computing perspective, to solve some bigger problems in the world that I think there's so many people working on it right now. I'm pretty bullish that by 2035 we'll be talking about it a lot more. So anyway, thanks for that question, because I love thinking about that stuff, and those are probably three things that I'm excited to see by then, even though you asked for one.
Well, you just got an invitation back to come in on the next version of this. We're just gonna make that the whole topic of a conversation, because there's so much about what you just said that needs to be explored and unpacked. I think this one doesn't take a lot of vision, but I do feel like for certain in 2035 we'll look back at the idea of a piece of plastic in your pocket with a mag stripe to buy lunch. You can
yes.
It's both comical in so many ways and so insecure too, right? I give it to someone at a restaurant, everything about it,
Exactly. And that's absolutely why we've announced, kind of phasing out the mag stripe. We've pushed, we're pushing hard to make every transaction a tokenized transaction, because we constantly want to be leading on the edge of that transformation of the industry. So, yep.
You're trailblazing.
All right.
Thanks for doing what you do. George, this has been great. We are definitely going to have you back. It really does feel like we were just getting started, but just wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
Where can the audience learn more about you and the great work that your team does?
Yeah. Hey, first and foremost, thanks, Dan, again for having me. We certainly do post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. We're constantly out there. So I'd say follow Mastercard on LinkedIn, and feel free to follow me as well. And we let you know what we're up to. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, there you have it. George Maddaloni, one of the best tech leaders in the business. And that's all the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from People Rain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.